Thank you. Chair Langley, can you talk about why we care about what's happening in Africa right now? I mean, if you tell the American taxpayer, why are we there? Why are we spending the money we're spending there?
Thanks for the question, Senator. For access and influence, I'd say that a number of countries are at the tipping point of actually being captured by the Russian Federation, as they are spreading some of their false narratives across Libya. And from a strategic answer piece, access influence across the whole Maghreb, that is NATO's southern flank. We need to be able to maintain access and influence across the Maghreb from Morocco all the way to Libya. The PRC and Russia are also remaining exploitative where possible and coercive when necessary. They want that ground. They want power projection capabilities. So for the most part, the rest of the continent is also for mining concessions, whether it be gold or rare earth minerals. Both of them have a long-range plan. But I think at the accelerated pace, the Russian Federation is really trying to take over Central Africa as well as the Sahel. So, Senator, right now, China has a plan, a long-range plan, but they're coming in with their Belt and Road initiatives, but I think they do have global aspirations for a security construct to get a decisive advantage over the United States. We need activities and investments to deter that, especially engaging with our partners, our African partners, and telling them to ensure that they're not militarized. So this takes information campaign that's successful, but also assurance actions of building partnership and capacity where they won't need China in their false offerings of security construct.
Thank you.
When the U.S. Marine Corps general was called for a testimony to the U.S. Senate, nobody knew he was not trained to hide sensitive information. In his testimony, he revealed everything the U.S. has planned for Africa. He said that Russian and China's influence in Africa is increasing, and so, to prevent that, the U.S. will invest more in establishing military bases. Even though Russia and China are better alternatives for African countries because they offer mutual benefits, the general revealed that the U.S. needs to make African countries threatened by them. It's because only then will African countries allow the U.S. to keep the military bases and establish more without any scrutiny. Not only that, but a propaganda campaign would be done so Africans can be made to believe that the United States is not militarizing their countries. What more did General Michael E. Langley, who is the commander of the U.S. Africa Command, say about the U.S. planning to build more military bases in Africa? Let's know about the important and sensitive information he revealed in his testimony. Let's get started. So, what did the U.S. general reveal about U.S. plans in Africa? The U.S. military general was asked how the U.S. military is ensuring African countries do not go closer to Russia and China and stay loyal to the United States. He was also asked how long the United States plans to stay in Africa. His answer revealed a lot about what the United States has been doing and planning in Africa for not months but decades.
What myself and General Hokerson have been laying out into the rest of the decade is a plan that will get more strategic partner programs across the continent. And here's how it helps. In our overall competition with the PRC and the Russian Federation, they can't match that. The way we build and partner with our countries, with our African partners, builds capacity and capabilities, and also gives them appreciation for the rule of law of armed conflict, and working with their partners, and makes them even more resilient in getting into their own civil society and closing the gap between civ-mil, some of the drivers of instability. Partnering with just California and Nigeria and others have been the bedrock of stabilizing and increasing capability in our African partners. That is unmatched by our competitors.
Yes, the general revealed that the United States has made plans about Africa that will last for decades and ensure that African countries stay away from Russia, China, and other partners. But how does the U.S. actually use propaganda and false threats to make African countries choose the United States over Russia and China. Well, listen to the U.S. general doing it live in the testimony in front of the U.S. senators.
Ukraine to the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea directly impact the lives of millions of Africans. Terrorism, poverty, food insecurity, climate change, and mass migration shatter African lives. These factors sow the seeds of violent extremism and Russian exploitation across entire regions of the continent. AFRICOM's campaign revolves around central themes of ensuring strategic access, countering threats to the homeland and U.S. interests.
Yes, he said the U.S. plans to help Africa avoid only those threats that are threats to the United States' interests. The threat of food security, chaos, and crises are used to get approval from African leaders about establishing military bases. Only one option is presented. That is to side with the United States if the African countries want to stay safe. Due to the seriousness of the situation that is portrayed, African leaders consider it the best approach to allow the U.S. military to set bases in the country. You should know that the troops and commanders working in the U.S. African Command always have information about African society. In fact, while staying in African countries, they gather this information and intelligence so it can be used later to manipulate Africans. Here's a reminder to please like and share the video and subscribe to our channel to watch more videos on Black culture, history, civilization, and identity. Let's continue now. So, what did the U.S. general demand from Congress to expand the operation in African countries?
In today's dynamic environment, our whole of government partners require appropriate resourcing. I strongly advocate for our State Department and USAID partners to receive the resources they need to guarantee our combined success. I would also like to highlight a campaign that benefits from our Congress, which supports the African Center of Strategic Studies, which is celebrating its 25th anniversary. In Africa, modest investments and resources go a long way towards achieving our national security interests. Africa faces many challenges, but also offers even more opportunities. With our African partners at the forefront, reinforced by our efforts and the efforts of our allies, we will continue to gain ground towards achieving lasting stability, security, and prosperity on this crucial continent.
Yes, he literally said that Congress should give funds to the U.S. military, which can be invested in carrying out missions and operations throughout Africa. You should know that he was not talking about investing in projects like roads and hospitals that will benefit Africa. It's because the U.S. military never does so. He was talking about expanding the military bases and carrying out missions, increasing U.S. influence in Africa. In his opinion, that should be done so the United States can achieve its national interests. Because it's a matter of the U.S. national interest only, African countries will be betrayed, and the U.S. will use its military bases to dictate how African countries should engage with other countries. If the U.S. wants to work for Africans' welfare, it becomes questionable how it will be achieved using military bases, not NGOs. It's common sense that when a country builds military bases in another country, it will carry out secret operations. An important question was asked about what the U.S. military is doing on all levels in Africa to ensure that African countries stay loyal. The question was, to tell how deeply the U.S. military has reached African society and institutions to ensure that there is no space for Russia and China. Well, the answer shocked everyone.
General Kurilla and General Langley, can you explain the importance of DoD working across the interagency, especially with the State Department and USAID, to counter malign PRC activity in your AORs, and how can Congress help you?
Thanks for that question, Senator. And so collectively at our headquarters, we have representation across the interagency and also USAID and the Department of State. And collectively, when we campaign with our African partners, we take this into effect. We do this to counter, one, the information space. There's a number of things by Russia and China that are pushing and shaping onto our African partners, especially across their society, that changes ways and a departure away from international norms. So what we're doing is with activities and investments across USAID and the State Department to employ type of efforts that are unmatched, such as in global health. Just strategic health and is unmatched. But what? Just one thing. When I was with Minister Councilor Mara Berry, we went to Zambia. We went to Zambia because we knew that they had already put out information about the helicopters that we delivered there for crisis response were all about fighting a war. That was a skewed message. But what it was, I was with Minister Councilor Berry, and she says, "Hey, tell what the numbers for PEPFAR are about. We saved 25 million lives. We increased the life expectancy by 20 years when we started this 20 years ago with President Bush. This was, and others that supported these Congresses supporting funding of PEPFAR. That's something that's unmatched by our partners, by our competitors."
Thank you.
You see, the U.S. has made every institution dependent on Africa. That has been done so that whenever any African country decides to collaborate with Russia or China, artificial crises can be instantly unleashed to refrain that country. That's only one example of how the United States secretly controls every action taken by African countries with U.S. military bases. But how did he unintentionally expose the propaganda campaign the U.S. is planning to do to counter Russia?
I would say the Russian Federation's narrative drowned out the U.S. governments in the past years. They were accelerant. The Russian Federation, not just through Wagner, stoked a lot of the instability across the Sahel. They did this through misinformation, disinformation campaigns. So I see how we could double down in our efforts is through our own information campaign, but matched with our assurance efforts.
Well, he said that Russia was excelling the U.S. in propaganda campaigns, so the U.S. needed to act in response. How could the U.S. allow any other country in Africa to carry out a propaganda campaign unchallenged? However, the U.S. did not stop that campaign. Rather, it doubled its own efforts to spread misinformation. Yes, the U.S. general confessed that. Now, it is quite hard for the U.S. to criticize Russia. It's because whatever the U.S. accused Russia of doing is being copied by the U.S. itself. But why doesn't the U.S. military end cooperation with an African country when a coup occurs there? That's quite an important and difficult question for the U.S. Whenever a coup occurs, the U.S. becomes first to condemn it, end aid, and put sanctions. However, this never goes to ending U.S. military bases in that country. And that tells the whole story of how the U.S. actually works for its own interests while engaging with African countries. While telling that to the Senate, the general took pride in it.
Thanks for that question, Senator, because I will tell you that the State Partnership Program writ large is something that's unrivaled. When I say it's unrivaled, because this is not offered by the People's Republic of China, nor is it rivaled by the Russian Federation. So a continuance to engage through this authority is going to be able to assist Gabon into being increasing their partnership and capacity. We're going to operate within the imposition of 7008 sanctions because there was a coup, but I think there's enough notwithstanding authorities to increase their overall capacity in their security construct and also get them back on the road to democracy.
Does the military does their military that's taken over, the coup was done by the military, do they still have control and they running the country?
Yes, they do. And General Gandimi says that he is laying out a plan. State Department, our African Bureau, Assistant Secretary Fee is going to ensure that they lay out the benchmarks that will be acceptable to the U.S. government for them getting back to that end state.
But what are the reports that the Pentagon misled the Senate about military bases in Africa? Well, the U.S. general did not tell the entire truth to the Senate in his testimony. There have surfaced reports that say that the Pentagon intentionally misled the Senate on military bases in Africa, quoting fewer ones and downplaying the amount being spent on the operations. That was done so further scrutiny could be avoided, and the U.S. military could carry out its secret missions in Africa without Congress knowledge. Airbase 201 in Niger, established in 2016 at a cost of $250 million, serves as a crucial U.S. surveillance center in West Africa. However, during his testimony before the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, General Michael Langley described Airbase 201 as minimal and low cost. Langley identified only 2 enduring U.S. forward operating sites in Africa, Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti and a logistics hub on Ascension Island. He also mentioned that AFRICOM operates from 12 other locations across Africa with minimal permanent U.S. presence, citing inexpensive facilities and limited resources for essential tasks and quick emergency responses. However, that was another lie. Despite Langley's statements, experts argue that he downplayed the extent of the U.S. presence in Africa. According to AFRICOM's confidential 2022 Theater Posture Plan, there are at least 18 outposts on the continent, apart from Camp Lemonnier and Ascension Island. A U.S. official familiar with AFRICOM's current activities confirmed the operation of the same 20 bases. Additionally, 2 locations in Somalia and Ghana were designated as under evaluation in the 2022 document. However, it's reported that the U.S. has over 34 bases in Africa. Notably, Langley overlooked 6 contingency locations in Africa, including a long-standing drone base in Tunisia and other outposts used for covert U.S. operations in Niger and Somalia. Despite assertions from the military that contingency locations are simply basic staging areas, Joint Chiefs of Staff view them as essential for maintaining operations, potentially even being semi-permanent. Experts criticize the lack of transparency, arguing that the U.S. military used technicalities to obscure the true scale of its African bases. You should know that the contingency locations are major hubs for U.S. military activities. Therefore, excluding them from official counts misleads Congress and the American public regarding the magnitude of U.S. military presence in Africa. Recently, a coalition comprising 20 progressive, humanitarian, and anti-war organizations has advocated for the inclusion of New York Democratic Representative Jamal Bowman's cost of war amendment in the final version of the 2024 defense spending bill. This amendment aims to enhance transparency regarding the expenses associated with the U.S. military presence overseas and to provide public information about the military's footprint. Despite requests for clarification, AFRICOM declined to comment on General Michael Langley's testimony. Langley had described Airbase 201 in Agadez as a cooperative security location, contradicting assertions that it is an enduring forward operating site. A reporter who personally inspected Airbase 201 observed substantial infrastructure and facilities, including a runway, aircraft hangars, living quarters, dining facilities, and recreational areas, all within a secure perimeter. Despite the Pentagon's portrayal of Airbase 201 as low-cost, its construction and maintenance demand significant financial investment from U.S. taxpayers. What's more, Camp Lemonnier in Djibouti plays a critical role as a U.S. base in East Africa, supporting various operations in Yemen, Somalia, and elsewhere. It has undergone significant expansion since 2002 and now hosts thousands of personnel. Furthermore, the U.S. has established contingency locations in various African countries, including Tunisia, Libya, Botswana, and Niger. While officially labeled non-enduring, these locations are crucial in long-term U.S. operations. However, concerns persist regarding transparency and oversight of these military activities. Critics argue that the American public and Congress should have greater insight into these missions to facilitate informed debate about U.S. military engagements abroad. What do you think? After listening to the testimony of the commander of the U.S. Africa Command, should African countries allow more U.S. military bases in Africa? What should be done with the tens of U.S. bases already present in Africa? In the comments section right below, share your thoughts on whether African countries should collaborate with the United States or Russia and China. Do you want to watch more videos like this one? If so, subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon next to it. We have decided to bring videos on something nobody talks about: the Black culture, civilization, history, and evidence about how glorious Blacks have been. Thanks for watching, and until the next video, stay tuned.